Captain Jack Morrison stood on the observation deck of Defense Station Alpha watching Earth turn slowly below him. The morning shift had just begun and coffee still steamed in his cup when the first alarm sounded. His communications officer, Lisa, turned from her console with wide eyes and said the long-range sensors had picked up massive objects. Emerging from hyperspace near Jupiter, Jack set down his coffee and moved to the main display screen. The objects were huge and moving fast toward the inner system. There were 12 of them, shaped like crystal spears that caught starlight and threw it back in strange patterns. No human ship looked like that, and no human ship was that big. Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the main screen from her flagship UZ's Defiance orbiting Mars. Her face was calm, but Jack could see the tension in her eyes. She told all defense stations to go to full alert and prepare for a possible first contact with an alien species. Jack had trained for this moment his whole career, but somehow it felt different now that it was really happening. The alien ships moved with impossible grace through the asteroid belt without slowing down or changing course. They ignored all attempts at communication from human vessels. Radio signals went unanswered, and even the universal mathematical sequences that scientists had prepared for first contact received no response. The ships just kept coming toward Earth like they had somewhere important to be, Commander. Ryan Blake called in from Luna Colony to report that his telescopes were tracking the alien formation. He said the ships were definitely military vessels based on their energy signatures and weapon ports. Jack felt his stomach tighten as he realized this might not be the peaceful first contact that everyone had hoped for. Dr. Nathan Ford spoke from his research station on Ceres, saying his computers had finished analyzing the alien ships. The technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had built. Their engines produced energy levels that should have been impossible, and their hulls were made from materials that human science could barely detect, let alone understand. President Lisa Shun appeared on emergency broadcast from her office in Geneva. She spoke calmly to the world about the approaching alien vessels and assured everyone that Earth's defenses were ready for any situation. Jack wished he felt as confident as she sounded, because the truth was that human weapons had never been tested against technology this advanced. The alien ships reached Earth orbit in less time than it should have taken. They formed a perfect circle around the planet like they were performing some kind of ceremony. For several minutes nothing happened, and Jack began to hope that maybe this really would be peaceful contact after all. Then the bombardment began. Beams of pure energy lanced down from the alien ships, striking the largest cities on Earth. New Angeles disappeared in a flash of light so bright that it overloaded the station's cameras. Sydney followed seconds later, and then London and Sao Paulo and Mumbai and dozens of other cities around the globe. Jack watched his home planet burn and felt something break inside his chest. These were not explorers or diplomats or scientists making first contact. These were conquerors who had come to destroy everything humans had built over thousands of years of civilization. His weapons officer shouted that Defense Station Alpha was being targeted. Jack ordered all batteries to return fire, but their missiles and energy weapons had no effect on the alien hulls. The crystalline ships shrugged off everything the humans could throw at them like insects bouncing off armor plating. Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled over the communications system, ordering all human ships to fall back to the outer system. The battle for Earth was over before it had really begun, and humanity had lost in the most complete way possible. Jack gave the order to evacuate the station as alien beams started cutting through the hull around him. Commander Blake reported that Luna Colony was under attack and that he was loading civilians onto every ship that could fly. The moon's defensive installations were melting under alien fire like ice in summer heat. Dr. Ford confirmed that all human colonies throughout the system were being hit simultaneously in what could only be a planned campaign of total destruction. Jack made it to an escape pod just as Defense Station Alpha exploded behind him. As his small craft tumbled toward Earth, he could see the alien ships methodically destroying everything humans had built in space. Orbital platforms and research stations and communication satellites all turned to debris and scattered metal. President Chion's final transmission came from a bunker deep underground. She declared martial law across all human territories and activated something called Project Lazarus that Jack had never heard of before. Her voice was steady, even as explosions echoed in the background, and she promised that humanity would survive this attack and would find a way to fight back. The escape pod's heat shield glowed red as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Through the small window, Jack could see the ruins of civilization spread out below him like a map of human failure. Smoke rose from crater lakes where great cities had stood that morning. The orbital bombardment had lasted less than an hour, but it had destroyed everything that made Earth the center of human civilization. Jack's pod landed in what used to be the suburbs of New Angeles. He climbed out onto ground that was still hot from the alien weapons and looked around at a landscape that belonged in nightmares. Nothing moved except the wind carrying ash and dust across the broken Earth. The aliens had not bothered to land troops or claim territory. They had simply erased human cities from existence and moved on to their next target. As night fell over the ruined planet, Jack heard other survivors calling out in the darkness. Humans were still alive, and they would find each other, and they would find a way to survive. The aliens had destroyed Earth cities, but they had not destroyed the human spirit. That would prove to be their greatest mistake. Colonel Amy Parker crouched in the command bunker deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains and studied the reports coming in from around the solar system. 3 months had passed since the alien attack, and the numbers were worse than anyone had dared imagine. Earth's population had dropped from 8 billion to less than 2 billion in a single day, and those who remained were scattered in hiding. Aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Collective according to the few transmissions that human codebreakers had managed to decode. They had established mining operations on every major asteroid and were systematically stripping resources from the outer planets. Commander Ryan Blake sent regular updates from his hidden base on Titan, reporting that the aliens worked with mechanical precision and seemed to view the solar system as nothing more than raw materials waiting to be harvested. Captain Jack Morrison had become something of a legend among the survivors on Earth. He led a small group of fighters who operated from the ruins of New Angeles and had somehow managed to destroy 3 Zephyrian patrol craft using improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics. His success had inspired similar resistance cells in the ruins of other cities, but their victories were small and costly. Dr. Nathan Ford worked day and night in his laboratory on Ceres, trying to understand the alien technology that his teams had salvaged from wrecked Zephyrian ships. The crystalline hull material was unlike anything in human science and seemed to repair itself when damaged. Their weapons focused energy in ways that violated several laws of physics, and their computers operated on principles that human minds could barely grasp. General Pete Williams had taken command of what remained of Solar Defense Forces and was slowly rebuilding a military structure from the chaos. He operated from a mobile command ship that moved constantly through the asteroid belt to avoid detection. His biggest challenge was communications, since the aliens had destroyed most of the relay satellites that connected human settlements across the system. The Zephyrians showed no interest in communicating with humans or even acknowledging that they existed as intelligent beings. They killed any human who approached their installations, but otherwise ignored the survivors completely. It was as if humanity had been reclassified from a spacefaring species to a minor pest that would eventually be eliminated through neglect. Lieutenant Commander Helen Ross had been a xenolinguistics expert before the war, and now she spent her time trying to decode Zephyrian communications from her hiding place in the ruins of Sydney. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The aliens were not just conquering the solar system, but were part of a massive expansion that had already consumed dozens of other star systems. Earth was just one more target in a campaign that had been running for centuries. Admiral Kate Sullivan had managed to save most of her fleet by retreating to the outer system when the attack began. Her ships now operated from hidden bases in the Kuiper Belt, where they could avoid detection while planning their next moves. The Admiral knew that direct confrontation with superior alien technology would only result in more human deaths, but she also knew that doing nothing would guarantee extinction. Commander Blake's intelligence reports painted a picture of an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds and commanded technology that made human achievements look primitive. The Zephyrians had perfected interstellar travel and communication in ways that allowed them to coordinate attacks across vast distances. Their ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy within days, and their weapons could crack planets. Like eggs, Jack Morrison's team had learned to move through the ruins of New Angeles using tunnels and sewers that the aliens either did not know about or did not care about. They had established contact with other survivor groups and were slowly building a network of resistance cells that could share information and coordinate attacks. Their weapons were crude compared to alien technology, but human creativity was. Finding ways to make them effective, Dr. Ford made his first breakthrough when he managed to activate a piece of Zephyrian computer equipment that had been damaged in one of Morrison's raids. The device contained star charts showing the locations of other worlds that the aliens had conquered and detailed records of their military capabilities. What shocked Ford most was discovering that the Zephyrians had faced very little resistance from other species and seemed to expect the same easy victory on Earth. Colonel Parker received a coded transmission from President Chun, who was still alive in a bunker complex beneath the Swiss Alps. The president revealed that Project Lazarus was more than just an emergency protocol, but was actually a network of hidden facilities that had been built over decades in preparation for exactly this kind of catastrophic attack. The locations of these facilities have been kept secret from everyone, except a small group of military leaders. General Williams began reaching out to the Project Lazarus facilities and discovered that humanity had been quietly preparing for interstellar war for 30 years. Hidden shipyards in the outer system had been building vessels designed for deep space combat, while research stations had been developing weapons that could theoretically match alien technology. The preparations had been made in secret because the public would never have supported such militarization. The Zephyrians continued their systematic harvesting of the solar system without any apparent concern for human resistance. Their patrol ships swept through the asteroid belt on regular schedules, and their mining operations expanded every day. They treated space around Earth like conquered territory and behaved as if the war was already over. Admiral Sullivan called a secret meeting of all surviving human commanders at a hidden base near Neptune. The assembled officers represented less than 10% of the military forces that had existed before the attack, but they were determined to find a way to fight back. Sullivan revealed the existence of Project Lazarus and announced that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Commander Blake volunteered to lead the most dangerous mission yet attempted by human forces. He would take a small team to the Zephyrian command center that the aliens had established on Earth's moon and try to steal their strategic database. The mission would almost certainly be suicide, but the intelligence gained could give humanity its first real advantage in the war. Dr. Ford promised that his research teams were close to a breakthrough that would allow human weapons to penetrate Zephyrian shields. He had been studying the aliens' own weapons and believed that their energy frequencies could be reversed and used against them. It was a theory that had not been tested, but it offered hope where none had existed before. As the meeting ended, Admiral Sullivan looked around at the faces of the officers who would lead humanity's counterattack. They were outnumbered and outgunned and fighting an enemy with technology beyond their understanding. But they were still alive and they were still fighting, and that meant the war was not over. The Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake when they decided to destroy human cities instead of wiping out the species completely. They had left survivors, and survivors could learn and adapt and eventually find a way to strike back. Admiral Kate Sullivan guided her command ship through the dark spaces between Neptune and Pluto, where no human had traveled in decades. The coordinates from Project Lazarus led to what appeared to be empty space until her sensors detected the massive structures hidden behind stealth fields that had kept them secret for 30 years. The Kuiper Belt shipyards were larger than any human construction in history, and they had been building warships in silence, while the rest of humanity lived in peace. Dr. Nathan Ford stood in the main assembly hall of Research Station Omega watching technicians install the first Zephyrian shield generator into a human warship. His teams had worked for months to understand the alien technology and had finally succeeded in creating a hybrid system that could protect human vessels from enemy weapons. The breakthrough had cost them dozens of failed experiments and several lives, but now humanity had a weapon that could actually fight back. Captain Jack Morrison transmitted his latest intelligence report from the ruins of New Angeles, where his resistance cell had been monitoring alien patrol patterns for weeks. The Zephyrians had grown careless in their occupation of the solar system, and their ships now followed predictable routes that could be exploited by human forces. Morrison had also discovered that the aliens communicated with their home fleet only once per day, which created windows of opportunity for surprise attacks. Commander Ryan Blake prepared his infiltration team for the most dangerous mission in human history. They would use a captured Zephyrian transport to approach the Lunar Command Center and steal the strategic database that contained the Empire's military plans. Blake knew that most of his team would not survive the mission, but the intelligence they could gather might save humanity from extinction. General Pete Williams reviewed the production reports from the hidden shipyards and felt something he had not experienced since the war began. Hope was a dangerous emotion for a military commander, but he could not help feeling optimistic as he watched humanity's first real warships take shape in the construction bays. These vessels had been designed specifically to fight Zephyrian technology, and they represented 30 years of secret preparation for this exact scenario. Colonel Amy Parker coordinated communications between resistance cells across the solar system from her command bunker in the Appalachians. The network of human fighters had grown from scattered survivors to an organized military force that could strike at alien installations throughout the system. Parker's greatest achievement was establishing secure communication links that allowed the resistance to coordinate attacks without alerting Zephyrian monitors. The hidden facilities of Project Lazarus revealed the true scope of human preparation for interstellar warfare. Research stations had developed new weapon systems, while training facilities had prepared soldiers for combat in alien environments. Manufacturing centers had stockpiled resources and equipment that would be needed for a long campaign far from Earth. Everything had been planned and built in secret by people who understood that humanity's survival might depend on being ready for the unthinkable. Dr. Ford's hybrid technology program achieved its second major breakthrough when human engineers successfully adapted Zephyrian propulsion systems to work with human ship designs. The new drives could push vessels to speeds that matched alien performance while remaining stable enough for human crews to operate. Combined with the shield generators, this gave humanity ships that could actually compete with Zephyrian technology. Blake's infiltration team launched their mission using a transport ship that had been captured during one of Morrison's raids and carefully modified to avoid detection. The team consisted of 12 specialists who had trained for months to impersonate Zephyrian technicians. They wore alien uniforms and carried forged identification that would hopefully allow them to access the Lunar Command Center without triggering security alerts. Admiral Sullivan began operation preparation, which involved moving human forces into position for the first coordinated counterattack of the war. Ships from the hidden shipyards would strike at Zephyrian installations throughout the system, while resistance cells on Earth would hit ground targets. The operation would reveal humanity's true capabilities to the aliens, but it would also announce that the war was far from over. Morrison received new weapons and equipment from the project Lazarus stockpiles and began training his resistance fighters to use technology they had never seen before. The advanced human weapons were still inferior to Zephyrian equipment, but they were designed to exploit weaknesses that Dr. Ford's research had identified in alien defenses. For the first time since the war began, human soldiers would enter battle with weapons that could actually kill their enemies. Commander Blake's team successfully infiltrated the Lunar Command Center by posing as replacement technicians for a damaged communication array. The Zephyrians showed no interest in individual aliens and did not question the presence of the disguised humans. Blake realized that the Empire's greatest weakness was their assumption that no inferior species could possibly threaten their operations. General Williams revealed the full scope of Project Lazarus to his senior commanders in a briefing that changed everything they thought they knew about human preparedness. The secret facilities had been established after first contact with a peaceful alien species had revealed that humanity was not alone in the universe. Military planners had realized that not all alien encounters would be friendly and had begun preparing for the worst-case scenario. Dr. Ford announced that his research teams had identified the key vulnerability in Zephyrian command and control systems. The aliens relied on a centralized communication network that connected all their forces across the galaxy. If this network could be disrupted, it would leave individual Zephyrian units without orders or coordination. Ford believed that captured alien communication equipment could be modified to inject viruses into the Empire's information systems. Blake's team located the strategic database in the heavily defended core of the Lunar Command Center. The information contained detailed maps of the Zephyrian Empire and complete records of their military capabilities. Most importantly, it revealed the locations of other species that the Empire had conquered and the resources available on hundreds of worlds. Blake realized that humanity was fighting an enemy that controlled more territory than they had ever imagined. Colonel Parker coordinated the final preparations for Operation Payback, which would be humanity's first major offensive action. Since the war began, resistance cells had identified key targets while Admiral Sullivan's fleet moved into attack positions throughout the system. The operation would either prove that humans could fight effectively against superior alien technology, or it would result in the complete destruction of organized human resistance. The stolen intelligence from the lunar mission revealed that the Zephyrian Empire was not as strong as it appeared. Their rapid expansion had left them overextended, and many of their conquered worlds were lightly defended. The Empire relied on fear and superior technology to maintain control, but had never faced organized resistance from a species that could adapt and learn from defeat. Morrison's fighters prepared for their role in Operation Payback by studying detailed plans of Zephyrian installations on Earth. They would strike at communication centers and supply depots while the main fleet attacked orbital targets. The ground assault would be the most dangerous part of the operation because it would put human soldiers in direct contact with alien forces for the first time since the initial invasion. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of humanity's newest warship and prepared to test 30 years of secret military development against an enemy that had destroyed civilizations across the galaxy. The vessel represented everything that human engineers had learned about warfare and technology, but it had never been tested in actual combat. In a few hours, Sullivan would discover whether Project Lazarus had been humanity's salvation or its final desperate gamble. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched her fleet of 200 human warships emerge from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's orbit where Zephyrian forces had established their primary stronghold. The alien ships hung in perfect formation like crystal daggers waiting to cut down anyone foolish enough to challenge their dominance. Sullivan had spent months planning this moment, and now everything depended on whether human technology could match alien superiority in actual combat. Captain Jack Morrison piloted the experimental destroyer UES Retribution toward the Zephyrian fleet anchored near Mars. His ship was equipped with every advanced weapon that Dr. Nathan Ford's research teams had developed, including energy cannons that used reversed alien technology and missiles that could penetrate crystalline hull armor. Morrison had trained for this battle in simulators, but now he would discover whether human weapons could actually kill the invaders who had destroyed his world commander. Ryan Blake led a strike team aboard a captured Zephyrian command ship that his infiltration mission had secured from the lunar base. The vessel's alien systems were still active, and Blake's team had learned to operate the advanced technology well enough to pose as a legitimate Zephyrian unit. Their mission was to get close enough to enemy command vessels to download their strategic databases and communication codes. Colonel Amy Parker commanded ground forces that were simultaneously attacking Zephyrian installations across Earth's surface. Her soldiers carried weapons that had been reverse-engineered from alien technology and wore armor that incorporated Zephyrian defensive systems. Parker knew that the ground assault would be the bloodiest part of Operation Payback because humans would be fighting aliens face-to-face for the first time since the war began. The battle began when Sullivan's flagship opened fire on the lead Zephyrian cruiser with weapons that combined human engineering with alien energy systems. The enemy vessel's shields flared and held for several seconds before collapsing under the sustained bombardment. The alien ship exploded in a flash of light that had never been seen before in this war, and Sullivan felt a surge of savage satisfaction. As she watched her enemies die, Morrison's destroyer engaged 3 Zephyrian patrol ships in close combat among the asteroids near Mars. The aliens had expected easy victory based on their previous encounters with human forces, but Morrison's ship moved with speed and agility that matched their own vessels. His weapons punched through alien shields and armor with devastating effect. While his own defenses held against enemy fire, General Pete Williams coordinated the overall battle from his mobile command center and watched human forces achieve victories that had seemed impossible just months before. The secret preparations of Project Lazarus were proving their worth as human ships destroyed alien vessels with weapons that the Zephyrians could not understand or counter. Williams realized that 30 years of secret military development had given humanity a fighting chance against an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Blake's team used their captured command ship to approach the Zephyrian flagship without triggering defensive systems. The aliens assumed that any vessel broadcasting proper identification codes must be legitimate and allowed the disguised humans to dock with their most important ship. Blake's soldiers stormed the flagship's bridge and captured the alien commander. Along with critical intelligence about Empire operations throughout the galaxy, Dr. Ford monitored the battle from his laboratory on Ceres and analyzed the performance of human weapons against alien defenses. His hybrid technology was exceeding all expectations as human. Ships systematically destroyed enemy vessels that had previously seemed invulnerable. Ford realized that the key to victory was not matching alien technology but understanding it well. Enough to exploit its weaknesses. Parker's ground forces fought brutal close combat battles in the ruins of Earth cities as they assaulted Zephyrian supply depots and communication centers. Human soldiers discovered that the aliens were not invincible warriors but were actually quite vulnerable to conventional weapons once their advanced technology was neutralized. The ground war became a series of running battles through urban ruins where human knowledge of the terrain gave them crucial advantages. Morrison's destroyer led a squadron of human ships in an attack on the main Zephyrian battleship that had been responsible for the orbital bombardment of Earth. The massive alien vessel was 10 times larger than any human ship, but Morrison's tactics broke it apart piece by piece using coordinated strikes that overwhelmed its defensive systems. The battleship's destruction sent shockwaves through the remaining Zephyrian fleet as they realized that their technological superiority was no longer absolute. Admiral Sullivan received reports from across the solar system confirming that human forces were winning battles on every front. The Zephyrian occupation force that had seemed unstoppable was collapsing under coordinated attacks by opponents who had learned to match their technology and exceed their tactics. Sullivan ordered her ships to press their advantage and drive the aliens completely out of the solar system. Blake's capture of the Zephyrian flagship provided humanity with detailed intelligence about the Empire's structure and military capabilities. The stolen data revealed that the aliens controlled over 300 worlds, but had never faced organized resistance from any conquered species. Their rapid expansion had left them overextended and vulnerable to attacks by opponents who understood their weaknesses. The battle for Earth's orbit lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Zephyrian occupation fleet. Human ships had lost 30 vessels but had destroyed over 200 alien craft in the most decisive military victory in human history. The surviving Zephyrian ships fled toward the outer system where they were hunted down by pursuing human forces. Parker's ground troops secured every major Zephyrian installation on Earth and captured hundreds of alien prisoners, along with advanced technology that Dr. Ford's teams could study. The aliens had never expected ground combat and were poorly equipped for fighting human soldiers in urban environments. Many Zephyrian units surrendered without resistance once they realized that their technological advantages had been neutralized. Morrison emerged from the battle as humanity's first ace pilot after destroying 12 alien ships in single combat. His tactics became the standard for human fighter operations, and his success inspired similar victories throughout the fleet. Morrison realized that human creativity and adaptability were more valuable than superior technology when facing enemies, who relied on rigid doctrine. General Williams analyzed the battle reports and concluded that Operation Payback had accomplished far more than its original objectives. Not only had human forces driven the Zephyrians from the solar system, but they had also captured enough alien technology and intelligence to begin planning offensive operations against the Empire itself. Williams began preparing for humanity's first interstellar military campaign. The captured Zephyrian databases revealed the locations of other species that the Empire had conquered and enslaved. Many of these civilizations were still fighting desperate resistance campaigns against their alien oppressors and could become allies in a broader war against the Empire. Sullivan realized that humanity's fight for survival had become a war of liberation for dozens of oppressed species. Dr. Ford's analysis of captured alien technology revealed that the Zephyrian Empire was not as advanced as they had appeared. Their weapons and ships were indeed superior to human designs, but they were also standardized and predictable. Once humans understood the basic principles behind alien technology, they could develop counters and improvements that gave them tactical advantages. Blake's intelligence coup provided detailed star charts showing the Empire's territory and the locations of key military installations. The data revealed that the Empire's capital world was heavily defended, but that many of their frontier territories were vulnerable to attack by properly equipped human forces. Blake began planning humanity's first strike against the Zephyrian home system as the last alien ships fled the solar system. Admiral Sullivan stood on her flagship's bridge and watched Earth begin to heal from the wounds of war. The planet cities were still ruins, but they would be rebuilt by survivors who had proven that humanity could not be easily destroyed. The Zephyrians had made a fatal mistake when they chose to conquer rather than exterminate the human species. Now they would learn what happened when humans decided to fight back. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship as 50 human warships prepared to enter hyperspace for humanity's first interstellar military expedition. The captured Zephyrian navigation data had revealed the location of the Empire's capital world, and Sullivan was leading a strike force to attack the heart of alien civilization. The journey would take 8 months through hyperspace, during which her engineers would continue improving their weapons and defenses for the battles. Ahead, the human fleet consisted of vessels that had been built in the secret shipyards of Project Lazarus and equipped with technology that combined human engineering with reverse-engineered alien systems. Dr. Nathan Ford had worked tirelessly to ensure that every ship carried weapons capable of penetrating Zephyrian defenses and shields that could withstand enemy fire. The fleet represented humanity's greatest technological achievement and its best hope for ending the war. Captain Jack Morrison commanded the destroyer squadron that would spearhead the assault on Zephyr Prime when the fleet arrived in the enemy home system. His ship UES Retribution had been upgraded with the latest hybrid weapons, and his crew had trained extensively in the new combat tactics that had proven so effective in the battle for Earth. Morrison knew that attacking the Empire's capital would be far more dangerous than anything they had faced before. Commander Ryan Blake led the intelligence division aboard Sullivan's flagship and spent his time analyzing the stolen Zephyrian databases for weaknesses that could be exploited during the coming battle. The alien records contained detailed information about the Empire's military structure and the defenses protecting their most important worlds. Blake had discovered that Zephyr Prime was protected by massive orbital fortresses that had never been successfully attacked in 1,000 years of Empire expansion. Colonel Amy Parker commanded the Marine forces that would board and capture key Zephyrian installations during the assault on the capital system. Her soldiers were equipped with armor and weapons that had been specially designed for fighting aliens in their own environments. Parker had trained her troops to operate in the low-gravity and toxic atmosphere of Zephyr Prime, where they would face enemies fighting to defend their home world. The hyperspace journey gave human engineers time to perfect their technology, and developed new weapons specifically designed for the assault on the Empire's most heavily defended system. DR Ford's research teams worked around the clock to create systems that could penetrate the advanced defenses protecting Zephyr Prime. They developed new types of missiles that could home in on alien shield generators and energy weapons that could overload crystalline hull. Armor General Pete Williams remained in the solar system to coordinate the defense of human territory while Admiral Sullivan led the interstellar expedition. His forces continued hunting down scattered Zephyrian units that had escaped the main battle and were working to rebuild Earth's orbital infrastructure. Williams also oversaw the construction of additional warships that would follow Sullivan's fleet to Zephyr Prime. If the initial assault succeeded, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr system to find a fortress world surrounded by defensive installations that dwarfed anything they had encountered before. Massive orbital platforms bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets while patrol ships moved in formations that suggested military precision beyond human understanding. The capital of the Zephyrian Empire was prepared for war on a scale that challenged everything humans thought they knew about military technology. Sullivan ordered her ships to activate the stolen Zephyrian authorization codes that Blake's intelligence team had extracted from captured databases. The human vessels broadcast identification signals that identified them as returning Empire ships carrying important prisoners and strategic materials. The deception worked perfectly as Zephyrian traffic control directed the human fleet toward approach vectors that would bring them within striking distance of the planet's defenses. Morrison led his destroyer squadron through the outer defensive perimeter using the stolen codes while the aliens remained completely unaware that enemy ships were approaching their homeworld. The Zephyrians had never been attacked in their own system, and their defensive doctrine assumed that any ship broadcasting proper codes must be legitimate. Morrison's vessels moved into attack position while maintaining their disguise as returning Empire units. DR Ford monitored the approach from his mobile laboratory and prepared to activate the computer viruses that his team had designed to disrupt Zephyrian command and control systems. The viruses would be transmitted through the same communication networks that the aliens used to coordinate their defenses and would hopefully create enough chaos to give the human fleet an advantage in the coming battle. Blake's intelligence analysis had revealed that the Empire's central archives were located in a heavily defended complex on Zephyr Prime's largest moon. The archives contained records of every species that the Zephyrians had conquered and detailed information about their military capabilities. Capturing this facility would provide humanity with intelligence about dozens of potential allies who were still fighting against alien occupation. Colonel Parker prepared her Marines for the most difficult assault mission in human history as they approached the heavily defended orbital stations protecting Zephyr Prime. Her soldiers would have to fight their way through defensive positions that had been designed to repel attacks by entire fleets while dealing with aliens who were defending their homeworld with desperate determination. The moment of truth came when Admiral Sullivan gave the order to drop the disguise and begin the attack. Human ships throughout the system revealed their true identity and opened fire on Zephyrian installations with weapons that the aliens had never seen before. The Empire's defensive forces were caught completely off guard as enemy vessels that should not have existed began destroying their most important military installations. Morrison's destroyers struck the first blow by destroying 3 orbital defense platforms with coordinated missile strikes that overwhelmed their shield systems. The Zephyrian defenders responded with panic rather than discipline as they realized that their impregnable home system was under attack by the primitive species they had tried to exterminate months earlier. The battle for Zephyr Prime became a masterpiece of human tactical innovation as Sullivan's fleet used mobility and surprise to offset the aliens' numerical and technological advantages. Human ships struck at key targets throughout the system while avoiding direct confrontations with the heaviest defensive installations. The attackers moved like a pack of predators hunting prey that was larger but less agile. DR Ford's computer viruses spread through the Zephyrian communication network and began disrupting coordination between defensive units. Alien commanders found themselves unable to communicate with their subordinates, while automated systems began targeting friendly vessels instead of human attackers. The chaos gave Sullivan's fleet the advantage they needed to press their assault on the planet's primary defenses. Blake led a boarding party that captured the Imperial archives on Zephyr Prime's moon and discovered records that revealed the true scope of the Empire's crimes against galactic civilization. The Zephyrians had destroyed entire species and enslaved billions of intelligent beings during their campaign of expansion. The captured data would provide evidence for war crimes tribunals and intelligence for military operations against remaining Empire forces. Parker's Marines fought their way through the orbital fortresses protecting Zephyr Prime and captured the aliens' primary command center along with the Emperor himself. The ruler of an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds was taken prisoner by soldiers from a species that the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive barbarians. The capture of their leader sent shockwaves through the remaining alien forces, and many units began surrendering without resistance. The fall of Zephyr Prime marked the beginning of the end for the Zephyrian Empire, as human forces proved that even the most heavily defended alien world could be conquered by opponents who understood the importance of tactical innovation and strategic surprise. Admiral Sullivan stood in the ruins of the Imperial Palace and realized that humanity had crossed a line from which there could be no return. They had become conquerors. Admiral Kate Sullivan divided her fleet into strike groups that could attack multiple Zephyrian worlds simultaneously while avoiding the massive defensive installations that protected the Empire's most important systems. The fall of Zephyr Prime had broken the alien central command structure, but hundreds of worlds remained under Empire control and many local commanders refused to acknowledge their defeat. The war had entered a new phase that would require systematic destruction of military infrastructure across dozens of star systems. Dr. Nathan Ford established research facilities on captured Zephyrian worlds where his teams could study alien technology in its original environment and develop new weapons for the continuing campaign. The Empire's scientific databases contained information about dozens of species that had been conquered and enslaved over centuries of expansion. Ford realized that humanity could liberate these oppressed civilizations and gain powerful allies. In the fight against remaining Zephyrian forces, Captain Jack Morrison led the siege of Nexus Station, which served as the Empire's primary military shipyard and had never fallen in 1,000 years of alien expansion. The massive installation was protected by defensive systems that could destroy entire fleets, but Morrison's tactical innovations had proven that human creativity could overcome superior alien technology. The battle for Nexus Station would become legendary throughout the galaxy as an example of what determined humans could accomplish. Commander Ryan Blake coordinated intelligence operations across the former Empire territory and worked to establish contact with resistance movements that had been fighting alien occupation for decades. Many of these species had maintained underground military organizations that could be equipped with human weapons and trained in the tactical methods that had proven so effective against Zephyrian forces. Colonel Amy Parker prepared for the final assault on the Empire's last stronghold, which was a fortress world that had served as a fallback position for fleeing alien commanders. The planet was protected by every defensive system that Zephyrian engineers had ever developed and was defended by the Empire's most elite military units. Parker knew that taking this world would require everything that human forces had learned about warfare during their campaign of liberation. General Pete Williams had returned to Earth, where he oversaw the reconstruction of human civilization and the integration of captured alien technology into everyday life. The cities that had been destroyed in the opening hours of the war were being rebuilt with materials and methods that combined human architecture with Zephyrian engineering. Williams also coordinated the establishment of new colonies on worlds that had been liberated from alien control. The systematic destruction of Zephyrian military infrastructure proceeded with mechanical precision as human forces applied lessons learned from months of interstellar warfare. Each captured world provided intelligence about remaining Empire strongholds while also yielding technology and resources that strengthened the human war machine. Admiral Sullivan's fleet grew larger as more worlds fell and their shipyards began producing vessels designed specifically for human crews. Morrison's assault on Nexus Station lasted 3 weeks and involved some of the most innovative military tactics ever employed in space warfare. Human ships used captured alien vessels as shields, while infiltration teams sabotaged defensive systems from within the massive installation. The station's fall crippled the Empire's ability to construct new fleets and marked the beginning of the end for organized Zephyrian resistance. Dr. Ford's liberation of the prison worlds where the Empire had held survivors from conquered civilizations created a network of grateful allies who possessed detailed knowledge about alien military capabilities and territorial organization. Species that had been enslaved for centuries provided intelligence about hidden Zephyrian bases and helped human forces locate remaining enemy strongholds throughout the galaxy. Blake's intelligence network revealed that the Empire had been sustained by tribute from hundreds of conquered worlds and that the destruction of this economic system was causing the collapse of alien civilization across vast regions of space. Many Zephyrian colonies were abandoning their positions and fleeing toward unknown territories rather than face human forces that had proven unstoppable in battle. After battle, Parker's Marines perfected the art of assaulting heavily fortified alien positions during the campaign to capture the Empire's remaining fortress worlds. Human soldiers had learned to operate in alien environments and to use captured enemy equipment with deadly effectiveness. The Marines developed a reputation for tactical brilliance and ruthless efficiency that struck fear into remaining Zephyrian forces. The liberation of enslaved species created a coalition of worlds that supported human military operations while providing bases and resources for the continuing campaign against scattered Empire remnants. Former slaves eagerly joined human forces as soldiers and technicians while sharing knowledge about alien weaknesses that had been accumulated over centuries of oppression. Morrison commanded the final space battle of the war when the last organized Zephyrian fleet made a desperate stand near the Empire's original home system. The alien forces fought with desperate courage but could not match the tactical innovations and technological advantages that human forces had developed during their campaign of conquest. The destruction of this final fleet marked the end of the Zephyrian Empire as a military power. Admiral Sullivan stood in the ruins of the Imperial Palace on Zephyr Prime and reflected on the transformation that had occurred since the war began. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as victims of an unprovoked attack, but had emerged as liberators who had freed dozens of species from alien tyranny. The price of victory had been enormous, but the alternative would have been extinction. Dr. Ford's research teams cataloged the scientific achievements of dozens of conquered civilizations and began the process of sharing this knowledge throughout the liberated territories. The fall of the Empire had released centuries of accumulated scientific progress that would benefit all the species that had suffered under alien rule. Ford realized that humanity's greatest victory was not military but intellectual. Blake's final intelligence report confirmed that the Zephyrian Empire had been completely dismantled and that no organized alien forces remained capable of threatening galactic peace. The few surviving Empire loyalists had fled to unknown regions of space where they posed no immediate danger to the coalition of liberated worlds that had formed under human leadership. Colonel Parker led the ceremony on the Empire's former capital world, where representatives from dozens of species gathered to sign treaties establishing a new galactic government based on principles of freedom and cooperation rather than conquest and oppression. The document was signed in the same chamber where Zephyrian emperors had once planned the destruction of entire civilizations. General Williams delivered the final assessment of humanity's military campaign from his office in the rebuilt city of New Angeles. The war that had begun with the destruction of Earth cities had ended with the liberation of hundreds of worlds and the establishment of a new galactic order based on human values of determination and cooperation. The Zephyrian Empire that had once spanned hundreds of worlds and commanded technology beyond human understanding now existed only in history books and war memorial museums. The species that had thought themselves superior to all other forms of life had been defeated by opponents they had dismissed as primitive barbarians. Their greatest mistake had been underestimating humanity's capacity for both suffering and retribution. Admiral Sullivan addressed the assembled representatives of liberated worlds and reminded them that the price of freedom was eternal vigilance against those who would use superior technology to oppress weaker species. The human fleet would remain as guardians of galactic peace but would never again allow any single power to threaten the independence of free worlds. The War Memorial on Earth bore a simple inscription that captured the essence of humanity's transformation from victims to liberators. The words were written in dozens of languages representing all the species that had been freed from alien tyranny, and they served as a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come from the darkest defeats, as the last Zephyrian prisoners were loaded onto transport ships that would carry them to remote worlds where they could live peacefully under human supervision. Admiral Sullivan reflected on the lesson that the war had taught both humanity and the galaxy. Those who choose to destroy cities and enslave innocent species should remember that victims can become victors, and that empires built on oppression will eventually face opponents who fight not just for survival but for justice. The galaxy was free, and humanity had proven that sometimes the most unlikely species can rise to become the defenders of universal liberty and the destroyers of those who would threaten the peace of countless worlds.